You know, sometimes it doesn't matter if you go 0-4 at locals, because if you pull a card like this or that in your entry pack, I'm sure nobody cares about who won locals anymore, including the guy that actually won locals. Hey guys, this is Tom Box. Welcome to MST.TV, and in today's video we're going to be looking at meta trends once again, but more specifically siding trends that have slightly shifted a little bit. And if you guys are new here, well, give this channel a chance by hitting that subscribe button and ding that notification bell and hit that like button to beat the algorithm gods. If you've been here already before and you're not subscribed, well, what are you waiting for? Well, if you already watched UCG, the Ultimate Counter Guide, this is like a condensed version of that, and you can stay up to date with stuff like this as well, and I appreciate you guys for doing so. Now let's begin. Now in terms of the most represented decks in the meta, of course we have Sword Soul taking maybe about a quarter of the representation. We have Invoke PK, which is mainly the Scythe blocking deck. Now new to the list, we have Sky Strikers, which is Sky Striker DP, also performing very, very well, considering that a lot of this format requires you to commit resources, and the grinds aren't too bad. Of course, we have Invoke DPE, which is another very strong deck, and of course, there's Tri-Brigade Lyralus, aka Bird Up. Now, among these 5 matchups, there's going to be 4 side deck cards that we want to talk about because this is the trend that's being updated. Let's pull the chalkboard down. So the main 4 cards we're going to be taking a look at today is Cosmic Cyclone over the Twin Twister, DD Crow over basically any other hand trap. We have Evenly Matched, and we also have the one that counters all of these cards, Artifact Lancia. So why are people playing Cosmic Cyclone over the Twin Twister? Well, the TLDR answer is Artifact Scythe in the Phantom Knight matchup. Now, Cosmic Cyclone isn't exactly good against all the matchups, but it can be used in basically every matchup to some degree of success. Now, starting with Sword Soul, I'm guessing you main deck the card because ideally, you're not siding this card in, as most of the Sword Soul stuff would be chainable. The only one that is a true threat, I would say, is the sack card of Imperial Order, which basically belongs on a ban list by now. But in case you just need to deal with it right now, this is the one card where you probably want to play your spells first and then hold on to your Cosmic Cyclone to see if there's any sort of reaction, and then you would just Cosmic Cyclone it out. If they do not react to your first spell card, then you can assume to just shotgun your card now, because most of the cards that Sword Soul can activate in the back row are chainable, like Imperm. They could probably use a blackout to pop your cards, and so that you don't want to put 2 targets for them to actually target to pop you. So that's ideally what you want to think about when you get into that interaction. You know, just hold on to it, try to bait it out once, and if it's not anything, you're better off shotgunning the card, or otherwise you're going to be eating the Imperm or eating the blackout, and that's not very fun. Even though you're going to give them the token by banishing out their blackout, if you somehow paired it with, say, an Evenly Match, if you're going second, then you can wipe their entire board, especially if they did any Chowfing level play, or if they don't have Baroness. So, you know, it's really good on you. Next, the key reason, of course, against Phantom Knights, Artifact Scythe. If they did it right, if they did it in the way where they know they want to lock you out, then your biggest problem is going to be the Artifact Scythe, because Artifact Scythe gets summoned out twice. Once in the draw phase, perhaps, usually in the draw phase, and the second time in the standby phase. And how does that work? Is simply they put on purpose a break sword in the graveyard, and they put a wings in the graveyard, so they have another revival in the grave, and they revive their break sword onto the Rusty arrow, causing the Rusty to activate. Rusty is going to pop the Scythe rather than the DPE, and in that particular case, the Scythe is going to activate, summon out, and activate. And if you use, like, say, an Imperm, or if you use like a Chalice to negate that, it's, well, negated, but it's on board. Then standby phase, DPE comes back. DPE is going to pop Dagda plus the Scythe, and now Dagda is going to activate and summon the Scythe back and activate again. Scythe is not once per turn, and therefore 1 Droplet, 1 Chalice, and 1, say, like Imperm, not going to be enough to stop you from getting locked out. However, that is like a hard commitment in there, but 1 Cosmic Cyclone can prevent all that by simply banishing that Scythe, and then who's going to revive Scythe anymore? Now, if they didn't even set up properly, if they only set up the DPE play, because maybe you stunned them out a little bit, if they only set up the DPE play and they activate DPE to pop Scythe, that's when you Cosmic Cyclone. They've burned the DPE. They basically only have 1 interaction left with you, which is to use maybe one of their Fog Blades in the back row. So, and then again, you can also use it against Fogblade, perhaps later in the more simplified game state. Still very good. Against Sky Striker now, I'd say you can hit Engage, Multi-Roll, Floodgates, and Mystic Mine. They're a back row based deck anyway, and they're super spell heavy. Hitting some of these cards would be ideal. You just have to know which one to hit depending on the scenario. Against Invoke DPE, you're looking at staring down the Invoke Mechaba, but you can use this card to banish Shadal Schism, which is pretty ideal because that blocks out the window from coming out before the main phase, or chain to the card in general because it is a continuous trap card, and that will put you in a pretty decent position. Just remember, there's still fleur-de-lis in their hand. This card is only a part of the puzzle, and you just need other key pieces to negate the Mechaba, or maybe you just get lucky. Then as for the bird up matchup, Tenki, IO, Droplet, they don't play a ton of back row, and even if they have like a Revolt, you can't really stop it. And if they have Solemn cards, you're gonna have to take a guess and just hit whatever that's available, because honestly, they're not exactly a back row heavy deck. Now, DD Crow is one of the more versatile hand traps of the entire format. I think people finally have solved it, and there's basically something for everyone. And starting off with even Sword Soul. Sword Soul, there's really three angles you can hit. There's also the Tenyi Ashina. You can preemptively hit it, especially when they go into the Shelving play where they activate it, put it into the graveyard, put it at the Monk, and then they activate another card in hand, say another Tenyi to summon it out. This is the point where you preemptively just get rid of it if that's your only hand trap, and you can't deal with the Chaofeng negating, well, all your light, or preventing all your light monsters from activating. So in that particular case, yeah, it's pretty good because they committed 2 cards and kind of generated nothing, really. Those 2 monsters are just kind of floating in there and just hanging tight. But if you clear the board and you clear those cards, that means you got 2 cards out of the way for free, which is also very good. Second angle is going to be the Summit, which is the Monster Reborn-esque card from Sword Soul. You can clear that off, and well, you trade 1 for 1, and that's still not bad. And finally, you can also use it to hit Boxia. There's 2 angles you can hit on Boxia. I guess you can technically do it on the opening play, but I don't recommend it because they're trying to pop a Monk typically. But if Boxia is targeting itself and targeting 1 card in the graveyard, hit the card in the graveyard, Boxia still pops itself, and you get to stay alive, because sometimes that's the follow-up that ends up killing you because they're trying to revive the Moye, which will reveal a card in their hand, and maybe they're going to generate an A10 board from that, and simply 1 DD Crow killed the monster and got rid of the follow-up. So, you know, it's like 2 birds with 1 stone, or rather 2 cards with 1 crow. Anyways, next, Scythe. Aside from that, just in case Scythe isn't really the issue, you have DPE. You can bait the DP to pop one of your cards and you can just crow it away. Sure, they'll summon a Dasher next turn, but what's a Dasher really going to do against you? And you can also banish someone with their summoning targets, which is something they activate from their trap cards. You know, that's something you can hit. Against a Sky Striker, lots of great things to hit. Hit the Engage, hit the Kagari target, DPE, Ray, just tons of stuff for you. Against Invoke, there's 3 ideal targets. One's Alistair, obviously, DPE, and there's Apkallone. And as for Alistair, my preference in terms of the timing is going to be right when it's sent to the graveyard, because if they have 2 copies of Alistair, one in their hand and one in the graveyard, it's not going to make a bit of difference anyway, because the moment they activate the invocation, they're going to be able to send the one in their hand to the graveyard, and you banish one with DD Crow, that means they can still fetch back a banished Alistair back into their hand. So it didn't make a bit of a difference, because if they played invocation, they're going to still resolve it even if you banish their Alistair. So in the case that they have 2, it doesn't matter. But in the case that they only have 1, this is where it does matter, because they can't retrieve that Alistair anymore. Because you crowed it away, they can't activate the invocation. They are stuck with an invocation in hand, and you also get a big read that, hey, they actually don't have an Alistair in their hand, which gives you more cards that you can predict that's something else. And since the Alistair is not back yet, it'll take them longer to retrieve the card and perhaps set up an Invoke Mechaba. So that's why it matters in that regard. DPE is still a really good target to hit. As for the, I guess the Apkallone, the one that they put into the graveyard, well, it's mainly to chain to Shadow Schism so that they can't really banish the card and they can't summon it, summon out the window, because mainly they don't run any of the Shadow cards in their main deck anymore. If they're playing Invoke DPE, not Invoke Shadow DPE, that's a different deck entirely. If they're just playing Invoke DPE, yeah, you can just hit the Apkallone, and I think that would be it, because without the Shadow monster, they can't generate the window. And without the window, it's not exactly a big problem. And so that's one way to shut out the Apkallone, and DPE, whatever. And as for Tri-Brigade, you can hit the Barrel Canary target, or you can hit stuff like whatever that they're trying to revive from the graveyard. If they purposely put like a Cobalt Sparrow in the graveyard, you can hit that off, preventing you from getting hit with like a Nerval later on. It's all good fun, and if you hit whatever Barrel Canary targets, Barrel Canary will not summon out, which can prevent the summoning of Ensemble Robin, which is, you know, you don't have to deal with a special summon compulse on every summon that you put out. So that's pretty good too. Evenly Matched versus Lightning Storm. I think Evenly Matched just has several advantages over Lightning Storm. One, not being affected by Imperial Order. That's a pretty big one. And in terms of like consistency and like the ability to use them, they're fairly similar in terms of activation condition, and one hits both front and back, and that's enough. And if you need to pair Lightning Storm with another card for it to be good, well, same goes for Evenly Match. If you just pair it with a negation, you're going to have a much better time. So looking at Sword Soul, if they have a Baron up, bait the Baron. Like, I don't know, use whatever you can to bait the Baron, and even if you have to use a monster, because you can always crash into their board and then use the Evenly Match, it's all the same, and that way you still get to wipe the full board. If they did Chao Feng play, which is a little bit less common now because most people are moving towards Heavenly Circle, but if they do the Chao Feng play, you can still wipe their board because there's no Baron involved, and that's going to hurt because a typical player would set their blackout to hold the board, so they get the pops, the stun, the negate. You know, there's 3 ways of disruption there, but you get to wipe all of them with just one Evenly Match, which is perfect. Next, there is going to be Phantom Knights. This is a bit of a weird one, and in fact, for all of the decks that have, you know, DPE on the board, you need to pair this with a negation so you can keep the DPE on board when you do this mass board wipe. The reason being is that you don't want it to escape, because it can escape and you're actually DPing for a lot less cards, and the card comes back, you didn't really do your job. But if you can follow up with 2 things. One, even if it popped itself, if you can go into a Ruddy Rose, banish the entire graveyard from Phantom Knights, you should win the game. There's no follow-up, there's no double draw, there's nothing to come back from at that point. Then it's good game. And the other way is, like, either you go let them scythe you, because they're still going to scythe you, but they don't have a follow-up either. And if you can't do Ruddy Rose, I'm sorry, it's going to be a pretty rough time. Next, against Sky Striker, yeah, just hit them with it. They either have Solemn or they don't, and they'll just have to basically commit anything. If they want to stay alive, they have to commit a lot of cards onto the field anyway. Against Invoked, let's just say the DP just will run. They have pretty good timing. I don't think it's the most ideal card. They do have 1 or 2 trap cards in their hand that can use an Imperm to negate it with Mechaba. It's not ideal even if you bait it, because they'll likely keep a Winda on board, and that's going to be a rough time regardless. And if you want to kind of deal with it as Sword Soul, if they have, like, you better hold on to an Adhara plus a Vishuddha. You need both of them together to deal with the Winda that comes out. Like, after you DPE, they leave the card up. You need both. You need to normal summon out your Adhara, turn that into a Monk. Now you've used your special summon. Then you use the Vishuddha in your hand to bounce back that one monster. And then now maybe you can actually make a Chi-Shao, not Chi-Shao play, but like a Longyan play. As for Tri-Brigade, Bird Up, you just need to bait the Apex Avian and then just wipe the board. And, you know, it just simplifies the entire game state for you. Now just one type of negation will probably do the job for you. And for our last siding trend, we have Artifact Lancia. It's good against Wonderies by base, but I think nowadays it's more likely being used as a counter side against all of the previously mentioned cards, because some of these plays that you get through automatically wins you the game or automatically kills you, so it made it a worthy side. But it's not just that. A lot of these decks, they do have something that, well, they can use to protect themselves. Starting off with, say, Sword Soul. Sword Soul, this is like one card that you would probably just shotgun because everything is cost-based. Pot of Desires, Small World, Taya, all of the, I guess, 10 Yi monsters, they banish from the grave or banish from the hand as cost. So you can't chain this card, you're just stuck to doing the preemptive. And if they have a handful of just Sword Soul monsters, they have a handful of Sword Soul monsters. What do you want me to say? But you do block off like quite a big chunk of the deck if you do have this. So if they're stuck with like Pot of Desires, that means they don't get to advance the game state as much as they want to, not maintaining hand advantage. You get to capitalize off of that and maybe negate the future desires that was going to come out anyway. Next, against PK, it's really good against them. It more or less kind of denies them of every single PK monster affecting the graveyard. That hurts. No Levier play, no banishing of boots, no banishing of gloves, no banishing of even the traps. It's pretty rough, I would say, and building a board is much harder when you can't reactivate the Torn Skill from the graveyard, generating a new body for you. And that's just like a part of it. But they also use it themselves as a counter side against Cosmic Cyclones and DD Crow when they're trying to do their combo, because once they get the Scythe combo out while they're holding that Lancia, you are going to have a pretty rough time because the thing's coming out, nothing's getting banished because they're choosing not to banish anything on your turn. And now you're going to be stuck under a Cyclock. You're more or less going to get turn skipped. That's why they'll play it themselves as well. So just be very careful about that. Next, against Sky Striker, it's a counter side for them to deal with the evenly because it's just more stuff. It's like if they don't have not Imperial Order, but if they don't have a Solemn against your evenly, then they need something like this to handle that. And it's actually quite common. Against Invoked, you can prevent them from doing their invoked ritual summon, not ritual, fusion summon. Man, I'm going crazy now. But yeah, you can stop the invocation ultimately, and that's really it. But they don't get their fusion out, so you know there's that. Against Bird Up, you're only stopping the line of Tri-Brigade monsters using their effects to summon out Link monsters. That's actually not bad. I mean, you don't have to see, say, the bounty monster of the Ancient Warrior Double Dragon Lords. That's pretty good. You don't have to deal with like a Apex Alien getting summoned out of the deck. It's actually high impact if you think about it. So you're only dealing with a bunch of Xyz monsters. With Small World being, you know, popular these days, there's always going to be some level of relevance, especially based off of how people are siding. That's why Artifact Lancia is here. That's it for this video, guys. This is kind of considered as a short video for me, but if you guys want to help, check out MSTmerch.com, where you can get these beautiful MST.TV foil sleeves. This is the OG orange. We're almost out of blues, and once we're out of blue, we're not making any more, obviously. They're limited edition drops, after all. If you want to pick up something for Christmas or anything, the whole site is on sale right now, so you guys go check it out. And if you guys enjoyed the segment like this, where I do a little bit of meta coverage, I just cover a lot of different things in Yu-Gi-Oh! So it's not just meta stuff, some fun stuff as well. Well, hit subscribe, ding notification bell. Really appreciate you guys. Thank you guys for watching. You guys stay awesome, stay classy, and I'll see